Well, I'm Perry Schoen. I'm the Dean of the College of Education, and welcome to Illinois State University. I'm always the one between a conference and lunch, so I'll be brief. But I wanted to welcome you to the second annual Critical Media Literacy Conference and to Illinois State University. The College of Education, the Department of Educational Administration and Foundations, the Mary and Jean Borg Center for Reading and Literacy, along with Milner Library and the School of Communications, work together to co-host this conference. In addition, two faculty members from Illinois State and Lewis University, Dr. Nicholas Hartlep and Bradley Porfilio, collaborated to assure this conference extended beyond just 1 year. So congratulations to them. As noted on its website, this multidisciplinary conference highlights the need to promote critical media literacy to eliminate social inequalities and foster participatory democracy during the 21st century. The goal of the conference aligns with the College of Education's framework, realizing the democratic ideal, as well as Illinois State University's American Democracy Project that encourages civic engagement. Our college goal is to prepare educators who will be responsive to the ethical and intellectual demands of a democratic society. Based on my personal conviction and support of the college, I am more than happy to support and promote this conference because it directly addresses a crucial issue that affects the future of our society. The year's program includes 4 interdisciplinary strands that examine critical media literacy from different lenses: library sciences, educational foundations, communications, and reading and literacy. This conference is an opportune time for Illinois State University and for you, our guests, educators and scholars from diverse backgrounds, to examine the impact of mass media on society and to propose strategies to assure that it serves as a tool to promote democracy and social justice. I hope that your research and resulting discussions contribute to the advancement of knowledge in this quickly changing and dynamic social justice or social force. Thank you in advance for your scholarly contributions and for making this year's conference a success. Once again, we welcome you and invite you to enjoy our wonderful campus and our community. Thank you.
I'll keep my remarks short. My name is Nicholas Hartlep. I was part of the planning committee that made this conference possible. I'd like to thank Dr. Schoen for coming and being present and giving us his good wishes. I also want to thank Dr. Class, for being an integral part of getting this off the ground. There's a lot of processes that need to take place and a lot of planning. So I'm indebted to you, Dr. Class, as well as this morning getting all the technology up and running. Certainly I'd like to thank Dr. Porfilio for kind of moving the conference. It was his idea, and last year it was a smashing success, and I think this year is a smashing success as well, moving it here. And I also would like to thank Dr. Reynolds for coming to Keynote today. So without further ado, I'll let Dr. Weber come and speak about that, and then we'll get underway. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Julie Weber, and I am faculty, ironically, here at ISU in political science. We can now call it politics and government. I'm a political theorist, and I guess the reason I'm introducing Bill today is because I know him very well. And I met him almost 20 years ago at Purdue University, where he was a faculty member and I was a graduate student. And since then, in that time, Bill's wrote like 6 or 7 more books than he had at the time, including Understanding Curriculum, which is a kind of paradigmatic text that he published with a bunch of other authors, including Lynn Feinar, that's been translated into a few languages. And Bill and I have published a couple books together. And so I just want to make a remark that the one text I think that Professor Reynolds has written that was probably the most informative for me, and I think still remains relevant today, was a chapter in that book called Understanding Curriculum as a Political Text. And the reason for that is because I was in politics, but also because you know, the conference today is about critical media literacy, but our media life is so connected to politics that his work extends it beyond the classroom. And I think that that's a very important thing, and you'll see that in his talk here in a minute. So let me just tell you a little bit about him. He's published 8 books to date. He's got about 4 in the pipeline, 2 of which have been published in Korean and Chinese. He has 2 book series, one with Brad Corfilio's here, and then one standalone, and I have a book, that's the first one in that series. And he's given numerous lectures, keynote speaker addresses. He's guest lectured at other universities, he's guest taught at other universities, and has been basically doing his curriculum as political text, as I see it, for 30 years or more. So I'll just go ahead and let him start. Professor Bilbrough?
Thanks, Julie. I want to thank, I want to thank Illinois State University, Dr. Schoen, and Nicholas and Brad for doing this whole critical media literacy conference and inviting me. And I do want to say I was really flattered by the picture in the program. So I figured it's the first time I've ever had my picture in a program. And so it's really almost the next best thing to the cover of the Rolling Stone. This presentation has this long title. And so I want to shorten it. And it'll give a clue what I'm going to talk about. And I just want to have it be a question, where are the Mockingjays? Okay? So I'll start with a couple of quotes. And I think this first part will probably be preaching to the choir. And part of this presentation is in a forthcoming book called Critical Youth Studies, a reader edited by Awad Ibrahim and Shirley Steinberg. So, I'll start. First, a quote by Henry Giroux. The information, entertainment, and cultural pedagogy disseminated by massive multimedia corporations have become central in shaping and influencing every waking moment of children's lives, all toward a lifetime of constant, unthinking consumption. One more quote by Deleuze. Marketing is now the instrument of social control and produces the arrogant breed who are our masters. End of quote. Introduction. Television, music, popular fiction, movies, the new technologies of enhanced video, computer games, and of course the ubiquitous internet have transformed culture, especially media culture, into the primary educational site in which youth learn about themselves and the larger world. Media culture and critical media literacy enable youth to understand and participate in the representations that help to construct their identities. In the struggle over the symbolic order that characterizes our times, media culture, developed by name brands and various forms of media, including the Hollywood film industry, is crucial in creating the identities and representations that our youth embrace. Compounded by an increasing number of corporate mergers, fewer companies are determining what this symbolic order will display. In fact, media conglomerates such as Time Warner and Disney now have overwhelming influence. In the wake of this symbolic order, which is represented to youth in classrooms, what is represented to youth in classrooms as testable, discrete forms of prepackaged information has become increasingly insignificant to them. Something to be suffered through, memorized, recalled, and promptly forgotten in the quest for the real currency of post-industrial military, prison, global corporate society, media culture. Conservative policies have systematically disinvested in public schools, turning them largely into dull testing centers for middle-class students and warehousing units and surveillance centers for working class and poor youth of color. This is done all in the name of some type of continual monitoring in the name of accountability that wallows in praise of high test scores on high-stakes tests of which schools and teachers can be judged as successes or failures. I actually believe that accountability is the fascism of the 21st century. Schools and universities have become insidious corporations whose grandiose goal is to make a profit. Whether that profit manifests itself in public schools with increasing funding because of high test scores, or in the universities in increasing the number of student credit hours. Universities have shining buildings, beautiful lawns, and soulless organization. Of course, efficiency and achieving these goals is praised, and ideas that politically critical ideas that stray from this path are condemned and in many cases punished. As a result of this development, students view schooling as a path to a job. Just ask undergraduates, why are you here? To get a job. And view the world with a consumer consciousness. Schooling at all levels is exclusively viewed as something to be consumed, whether it is in terms of points, grades, courses, degrees, or even pizzas. Schooling becomes the memorization of discrete bits of information to be regurgitated on tests and then in most cases forgotten. Schooling becomes something to be consumed and endured, not a haven for critical thought and discussion. Absent is the devotion to study, learning, erudition, complicated conversations, and reading for the sake of their transformative power. Studying and reading become focused on only one goal: better test scores or the accumulation of information. Curriculum constructed by the state has become a lifeless info artifact to be downloaded into the students and recited by them. It is the epitome of banking education that Freire described. It is banking with a strict accountability for the deposits. So, there exists a standardized state-developed curriculum, scripted lesson plans, if you can believe it, determined state objectives, computerized reading tests constructed by accelerated reading program software, state-mandated tests developed by the very lucrative testing corporations such as Pearson. You could do a whole talk on Pearson, okay? And EdTPA and all of that. To make sure teachers are correctly implementing and depositing what they are told to implement and deposit. So, ironically, it is also a time of activism with students in the streets and dystopic novels about resistance by youth. The times demand our attention. Giroux and others have written extensively on student activism, particularly in the case of global protest against increasing tuition fees and austerity measures. Quote from Giroux, counter public spheres and modes of resistance that we once did not think young people could mount have erupted in a rush of emotional and political expressions and scattered demonstrations. Mass demonstrations have been organized through emergent screen cultures of a generation well-versed in new technology, technologically assisted forms of social networking and political exchange. I will turn my attention to the fictional manifestations of monstrous and threatening wild children and their violence, resistance, and refusal. I've always enjoyed reading novels, which is probably the primary reason I became an English major as an undergraduate and for my master's degree. Nothing was better than curling up in a comfy chair and reading a novel. I read all the novels that I could get my hands on, from the Western canon of authors like Dickens to pulp novels like Stephen King. I also read many dystopic novels and watched many dystopic films. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip Dick, which was the basis for the film Blade Runner in 1982. Animal Farm, Lord of the Flies, Brave New World, and many others made my reading list. Not only were these novels dystopic views of a possible future, they were a critique of the present society. I think one of the sources of my present critical perspective were these novels as I read as a young kid. These readings and my studies of literary criticism also led to my keen interest in cultural studies, youth culture, and critical media literacy. Of course, reading novels curled up in a chair or couch is a position of privilege of which I am acutely aware. So for me, the question becomes, how do we make the activity of reading current dystopic youth fiction a place for developing social consciousness and moving towards issues of social justice? At the very least, we should be able to make youth question the taken for granted consumerist mentality. At the present historical moment, reading books in schools has become a quantified and standardized activity. Reading, whether classics or pulp fiction, has become a question of accountability and measurement. When students do read, it is often to satisfy some testing requirement. And I know my own students, when they read as if I'm going to test them on the books that they are reading, and we're not going to talk about them, we're just going to have them. In most schools in the United States, the only reason students read is to take a test for the Accelerated Reader Program. Are you all familiar with the Accelerated Reader Program? Yes? Yeah. It's the devil. A software program that provides tests on a wide range of books. Schools buy into the AR program, and then they can purchase additional book tests as needed. On the Accelerated Reader website, the producers discuss how reading success is easy. Students just read a book, and then they take a computer test on that book. A high score earns students points on the way toward the cumulative point score for that particular grade level. Read a book, take a test, and acquire points. It depends on the teacher, of course, but there is little discussion of the books. Usually, there's none. The students read the books individually or not collectively, and learn that reading is attached to evaluation, test-taking, and accountability, and they begin to focus all their reading toward that end. Critical engaged reading does not have a place in this scheme. It is reminiscent of the now-defunct Book It program. Any of you familiar with the Book It program? Some of you, yeah. In which students read a certain number of books to win a free Pizza Hut pizza. Now, read so many books, acquire so many points, and you can take a trip to the local chain pizza place and get your pizza for your efforts. Now, my son, who's a clever little fellow, decided what he would do to get his free pizza. He had to read a number, like 10 books, let's say. So he would try to find the thinnest 10 books he could find to meet the basic requirements. And he was learning about our economy. Some kids have learned to love reading through this program. But it is more than likely they learn that the purpose of reading is, like most things in school, accumulation and consumption. But it is possible to use reading, I believe, particularly of dystopic youth fiction, as opportunities for critical, complicated conversations about society, politics, and social justice. Giroux discussed this possibility with film, and I'm just saying it's also possible with these dystopic youth fiction. The decline of public life demands that we use film as a way of raising questions that are increasingly lost to the forces of market relations, commercialization and privatization. As the opportunities for civic education and public engagement begin to disappear, film may provide one of the few mediums left that enables conversations that connect politics, personal experiences, and public life to larger social issues. Again, I would suggest that the same possibility exists for current dystopic youth fiction. I've spent 3 summers teaching critical literacy, graphic novels, and youth fiction, 2 summers at McGill University and 1 summer at University of California. In the summer of 2010, the students and I discussed ideas about critical literacy, ecological literacy, and graphic novels. There was real resistance to the graphic novel. In 2011, I returned to teach a course in children and youth literature. In this course, we discussed pulp fiction like Crank by Ellen Hopkins, Push by Sapphire, and The Film Club by David Gilmour. These novels were not the usual canonical text that the students anticipated and had interesting portraits of postmodern youth as monstrous in some ways. There was Christina, a high school junior, dealing with a methamphetamine addiction, Crank. Precious, an illiterate 16-year-old black girl, the victim of abuse and incest. And Jesse, a 15-year-old who, after making a deal with his dad to watch and discuss 3 movies a week, dropped out of high school. This popular fiction produced many discussions of contemporary youth culture, visions of the postmodern child, and the ways in which these books could foster critical perspectives on society. These critical perspectives included issues of dystopic youth fiction and commodification. So, I'll stop reading for a minute. So I want to talk about 2 books, okay? The Hunger Games, and I'll talk about the series, The Hunger Games, but I'll focus on the first one. As I was writing this, the second Hunger Games film was coming out. And a little-known book, maybe some of you know it, called Battle Royale. Okay? Battle Royale is a Japanese novel that basically a lot of people think a lot of the Hunger Games plot was stolen from. I think what happens with these things is they show these teenagers who are very rebellious, and the way they deal with the rebellion, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, is they make the plot of the novels disappointing, and they commodify everything in those books. Okay? So, proof in point. I've brought a prop. This is just one example of the Hunger Games stuff that you can buy. Right? And when the Hunger Games was out, let me ask you this, sorry. How many of you have read the Hunger Games or seen it? Look at that, right? And that's a teen novel, all right? Which has surpassed the teen thing. So I was going to wear this, but I thought that's a little much. So most of the blood and tribulations of the revolutionary spirit in Battle Royale and the Hunger Games are laid on the altar of the consumption of commodities in our postmodern society. And I want to say, no one stands outside this consumer culture. No one. Because we all shop on the internet, right? We all buy stuff. No one stands outside it. And I think when I talk to my students about it, what I use is the cell phone as an example. And how does the consumer economy appeal to youth? Because I was saying at breakfast this morning, I've got an old one. When I went into Verizon, they said, wow, you take good care of that phone. Okay? But now it's like every 10 minutes, a new one comes out, and we're rushing to Verizon or wherever it is to buy it. Okay? So no one stands outside this consumerist culture. And I think what's happened is, even these, ironically, these dystopic youth fiction novels and books are just another brick in the consumer wall. But let me go on. So I want to analyze the phenomena of dystopic fiction within a bricolage of critical perspectives. Revolutionary spirit can be blunted by purchasing and displaying our rebelliousness by wearing Che Guevara t-shirts and demonstrating on social networks like Facebook, which my son calls a type of slacktivism. So, you can post, and then you feel good, but you haven't done anything, right? Slacktivism. So, like the Facebook with a type of slacktivism which replaces activism. So we don't do activism because we're doing slacktivism. A politics of hope, and I believe hope is very important. And I know that people believe that if you have hope, you're a bit naive. But I still think it's, how could I do this if I didn't have hope? Right? Is faced with the real economics of consumer culture. This does not make me lose hope for critical change. A critical media analysis of cultural artifacts such as dystopic youth fiction can allow us to face our nightmare times and engage them. Indeed, youth have been instrumental in the Occupy movement, in facing police in riot gear and armed with extreme pepper spray. Despite the slacktivism of various social networks, there is also real activism. Of course, there's the possibility of these dystopic youth fiction and their films. Oh, we added, when I went to Calgary, we also added the novel Divergent. That's sort of the newest youth fiction thing. And, you know, I look back at Horkheimer and Adorno, and they said, you know, that these kinds of artifacts have both potential and drawback. So there is, I mean, it's not one way or the other. It's both. I'm trying to skip some of it. Okay. Let me just take my word for it. Battle Royale is much more violent than the Hunger Games, but it's the same kind of situation. What happens is they take a class of, they hijack, kidnap a class of junior high students, put them on an island, arm them, and let them kill each other. Now there's some resistance to the game. These two boys and a woman, they try to blow up the control center, but they're slaughtered by a hitman that the Japanese have hired. But the boy and the girl get away, and in the end, it's like the romantic love story has come to its final episode, where the two of them are running off into the sunset. Right? So again, well, here were these rebellious youth and not running off into the sunset. And I would say that the Hunger Games is exactly the same thing. And I was hoping, you know, that it would be more than that. And it's the Hunger Games have reached critical success. I mean, that they've made millions of dollars. They're the darling of the media. And so I want to talk, if I could focus on the Hunger Games just a little bit. I want to talk about how they represent race, class, and gender. Okay? So first I'll do race in the Hunger Games. The issue of race is relevant to the phenomena that is the Hunger Games. Engaging students in discussions of the racial differences of characters in the Hunger Games through critical media literacy could elicit insights into positionality and privilege. It is most interesting, and this shocked me, right? It is most interesting that hours after the showing of the Hunger Games in theaters, the blogs were alive with reactions to the film. Some of the most troubling reactions were to the characters of Rue, played by Amanda Steinberg, and Cena, played by Lenny Kravitz. In the books, Cena's race is not clearly defined. Rue's description is a bit more specific. She has bright dark eyes and satiny brown skin. Her fellow tribute, Fresh, has the same dark skin as Rue, but the resemblances stop there. Regardless of the character descriptions, the casting of black actors in the roles generated racist tweets on the internet. 4 people tweeted at the website Jezebel. I don't know if you're familiar with that website or not. This is not me speaking. This is quotes from the website. Okay. Cena and Rue weren't supposed to be black. One thing. Why did the producer make all the good characters black? Ooh, Rue is black. I'm not watching this movie. Finally, KK, call me racist, but when I found out Rue was black, her death wasn't as sad. Yes, you are racist. So the posts go on and on and on. It's not just a couple of tweets. It's not just a coincidence. There's an underlying rage coming out as an overt prejudice and plain old racism. Stenberg is called a black bitch, the N-word, and one person writes that though he pictured Rue with darker skin, he didn't really mean that we should take it all the way to black. It's as if the worst possible thing a person could be. Critical discussion of the books and films can elicit thinking that reads the world and the word. The issue of race and these reactions to the film and the discussions of those reactions can lead to confronting the global issues of the 21st century. Racist and sexist remarks have to be drawn out as legitimate objects of study, as authentic parts of student consciousness. How can you study anything and keep silent? Of course, the reactions to race are linked to issues of gender and class. Yeah, and I think my students would be just most comfortable not discussing any of it. Gender. I think I'm going to go through this quickly. It's very interesting that in all of these dystopic youth fiction books, the hero or heroine is the lead character is female. And the interesting thing is, at the end of them, even though they're sort of like the hero and the rebel, they succumb to the sort of nuclear family thing. And I hope I'm not ruining anything for you, but at the end of the Hunger Games trilogy, we see what's her name? Yeah, Katniss is now married and has children, and that's what she's doing. And she's left her sort of rebelness aside. So there's a lesson there, right? So again, it's all about the commodification of the Hunger Games as well. Any message of resistance can be dissolved in the plethora of merchandise for the Hunger Games. There are commentaries, a strategy board game, umbrellas, movie guides, guide to the series, a Hunger Games and philosophy book, figurines, trading cards, t-shirts, cookbooks, stickers, magnets, journal notebooks, pins, necklaces, keychains, t-shirts, and on and on. Youth can purchase their indications of being in the know about the Hunger Games. Some youth will admit that they never read the books. Maybe they saw the film, but wanted to be in, so they have purchased the merchandise. Thus, the purchase of merchandise becomes more important than reading books. As stated previously, capitalism is extremely recuperative, and any changes to its hegemony are easily co-opted by the market. Any resistant messages the books may contain are commodified. Let me repeat, no one stands outside the lure of capitalist consumption. Okay. I'll speak for a few more minutes and then you can ask questions if you like. The challenges of critical media analysis, critical pedagogy, and youth culture. Given our current economic crisis, a growing authoritarian populism, the rise of religious dogmatism, the failure of democratic governance, a political system largely controlled by bankers and corporations, and a massive education deficit in the United States, critical pedagogy becomes a reminder not only of something precious that has been lost under a regime of casino capitalism, but also of a democratizing project that needs to be reclaimed, reconfigured, and made a central part of our current political lives and those of future generations. In our present historical context, we are witnessing the resurgence of youth activism against the effects of postmodern casino capitalism and the overly violent responses by authorities to this question. There has also been an encouraging trend to resist and refuse the elaborate skill, drill, test, and I would add kill, hold on accountable our educational system. Students, parents, and teachers are refusing to give and take the high-stakes tests. When we get beyond this accountability schooling scheme, we can seek to understand and critique what youth are watching and reading. It is crucial to have these people question and critique what they are reading, watching, and buying. A critical pedagogical literacy would read the world as well as the word. It's not enough to simply bring dystopic youth fiction into the curriculum just to demonstrate how hip we are. Right? So, okay, class, I'm bringing in the Hunger Games. We're going to read it. Ain't I hip? Right? I remember how my teachers would bring in Simon and Garfunkel to demonstrate their with-itness. My friends and I would then question how revolutionary Simon and Garfunkel really were. I'm suggesting that we give students a chance to bring their own knowledges into a classroom and recognize and legitimate them. The legitimation of student knowledge is a significant issue in the present educational system, given its deficit of critical thinking. Youth knowledges are seldom given credence in a system mainly concerned with accumulation for accreditation and producing a consuming populace, not a critical citizenry. Even books and films that legitimate student knowledge and interest can be absorbed and co-opted by an overbearing system that serves the present social order. It's easy to imagine, for example, an accelerated reader test for Battle Royale and the Hunger Games. Despite the fact that many of the messages of critique, resistance, and rebellion are lost in the haze of the overabundance of merchandise generated by this dystopic fiction, critical reading media analysis could help to provoke questions centering not only on the themes and structures of the novels and the movies, but on their commodification and issues that arise from that analysis. Critically discussing issues of contemporary youth knowledge and their interest in this type of reading can lead us to the development of critical thinking and questioning missing from our educational system. May the odds be in our favor.